ઘણા વખત પછી અનિલભાઈ જોઈન થયા આ વખતે. તમારી જરૂર હતી ભાઈ.
ના ના, you're doing fine. I am seeing all these things. એટલે મને
Yes, it's excellent. નવા નવા શબ્દો મારે તો પછી I lost એકદમ જ.
Yeah.
રાજનભાઈ કઈ સ્લાઇડ હતી તમને યાદ છે?
અને તમારે એટલે મને થોડું અપ ડાઉન કરો, અધવચ્ચે આવ્યા હતા એટલે મને જોવું તો ખ્યાલ આવશે, મને અત્યારે યાદ નથી રહ્યું કઈ હતી. સજ અપ ડાઉન કરો ને એટલે હું જોઉં.
Okay. Yeah, but next time we'll write down the number.
I think principle of
આગળ પાછળ જાઓ. એક
આ કરી હતી.
ના હજુ આ નથી કરી.
ના ના ના, નથી કર્યું.
પ્રિન્સિપલ
નથી થયા, પ્રિન્સિપલ.
એક પાછળ જાઓ હજુ.
No. No.
Okay, I think we were somewhere here. And we started talking about some of these things. Yeah.
શુદ્ધ અદ્વૈતનું શરૂ કર્યું હતું.
રાજન એક પાછળ જાઓ ને, એક હજુ
પાછળ જાઓ. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, theology of Vallabhacharya.
Right.
શુદ્ધ અદ્વૈતમાં હતો. We were in શુદ્ધ અદ્વૈત.
Okay. Now, અનિલભાઈ પ્રાર્થના કરો પછી આપણે આગળ વધીએ અને તમે you can join when you can comment anytime you feel like.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
પ્રાર્થના કરો.
પ્રાર્થનાથી શરૂ કરીએ. વસુદેવ સુતમ દેવમ કંસચાનૂરમર્દનમ દેવકી પરમાનંદમ કૃષ્ણમ વંદે જગદ્ગુરુ.
Okay. So I think that we are coming to the, we talked about rituals and how things are done in Pustimarg. Now this is actual theology of Vallabhacharya. I mean, what different philosophy of Vaishnavism and what our sect teaches is what now this is all about. And I mean, Vaishnavism in general, maybe I should go ahead and give you a broad overview. Things in terms of ultimate reality is a person, either Krishna or Vishnu. Keval Advait looks at the other way. The ultimate reality is Nirgun, that means without form. Second part, three entities, Jiva, Jagat and Jagdish, are real in Vaishnavism. એટલે ભગવાન ખરેખર છે, જીવ ખરેખર છે, અને world as we experience is really real. It is not an illusion, it is not Maya. Second part. પછી Advaita will say that ultimate reality is one, you are that. You are nothing but Brahman. Vaishnavis in general will say, no, that's not true. You qualitatively you are, but quantitatively you are not. So if God is $1, you are a nickel or a quarter or a penny, but you never are $1. So that's another. Fourth one will be is the ultimate reality can only be reached by bhakti, because bhakti creates called symbiotic relationship with God. Essentially it's a union or a communion, but not a merger. That happens with Gnana, because Gnana Yoga will essentially say ultimate reality is formless. So you merge into ultimate reality. Well, Vaishnavism in general say God is a person. So you cannot merge into a person. All you can do is communion with a person. That's the other part. And the definition of Maya is different in Keval Advaita and Vaishnavism in general. And I think those are the major differences, or call it as a group of Vaishnavism. Now there are subgroups within Vaishnavism which will have some version different way, some version other way. Let me give an example. All Vedantic school says God is an efficient and a material cause of the universe, except one, which is a dualism or Dvait of Madhavacharya, who will say God is not material cause. God is an independent entity, and I and you are independent entity. We are not even close to each other in terms of that. God created me and you and world not from himself. So that is the key difference between within Vallabhacharya, within Vaishnavism in general versus part of Vaishnavism, which is Madhavacharya. So and that is similar to Christianity and Islam as well. The God is a separate individual entity, and you are never ever like him. That's the bottom line. I think in that respect, well, Madhavacharya is closer to Christianity. And some of the Christian scholars are saying is that some of the Vaishnavite ideas actually came about as an influence of Christianity. Now, that may or may not be true, and I think it's probably stretching it. But I think that human mind works in the similar way, whether it's in Europe or Asia. So I think it is merely a concordance of ideas rather than, or maybe some influence, but not necessarily copy. So, like when Christianity was in full force in West, in Europe, especially in 12th, 13th, 14th century, many of the ideas of mysticism that came about are similar to Keval Advaita ideas. Same thing, ગઈકાલે મેં મોકલ્યું હતું Jalaluddin Rumini prayer. I don't know whether you had a chance to listen to it.
It's very nicely done. I heard it.
Yeah. And I think, just think about it. This is a 13th century mystic of Islam, and this is a Sufi mystic. Now, Sufism has a lot of similarity to Vedanta, especially Kevala Vedanta. So when you listen to his poetry, it almost sounds like he's talking in the same terms as Sankaracharya. He ends up saying, go to the root of your soul. So the point I'm making is this: you are a jiva. Go to the root, which is Atman, and its root, which is Brahman. So go to the root of your soul. That's what he says. And he repeats again and again and again. And at the end, he says, you are that. So he essentially says, Tattvamasi. So go to the root of your soul, and you are that. That's what he says. So it is almost like, I have no idea he ever even heard of Shankaracharya. But how human mind thinks. Shankaracharya happened around 7th, 8th century. Most people think it's 680 to 720. That's how most people say. And this guy happened to be in Middle East, in Persia, Iran, in around 13th century. Now Sufism was not necessarily acceptable to Islam. So call it, Sufism was an offshoot of Islam. And as a matter of fact, Sufis were persecuted by Islam because they kept on saying, I am God, which is a blasphemy in Islam. So they were persecuted by Islam. But and the point I'm making is this, is that many of these ideas are similar or somewhat equivalent in Islam, Christianity, and Vaishnavism as well. So it probably is because human mind thinks in similar manner. Okay, all right. So now let's go to, anybody want to add anything? તમારો અવાજ બંધ છે.
તમાર volume.
Sometimes it's also has an influence of the Kashmiri Shaivism sometimes.
That's true.
People say, but we don't know about it. But Sufism probably older than maybe 13th century. I think it is, the origin could be in Turkey, if I don't know. But something like that is there. So that similarity comes from maybe a migration of people, or maybe some intermingling of.
Right, right. Some communication somewhere, you know. I mean, the best I remember that Sufism started around 11th century. That's what my memory is, you know. Islam started in 6th, 7th century, and Sufism was like many hundred years later as an offshoot of Islam.
There is on Netflix, there is a big series about Sufi practices. And if you look at it, some of the practices look like yoga practices. Hello, I forgot the name of the show.
I also for you say start with you.
Yeah, there was a great poet, Sufi poet in Turkestan, and it's about that poet and how he changed his life.
Yeah, there are a lot of good Sufi poets, but anyway, yeah. Rajan, I have two questions.
Yeah.
What you are talking, it's in the series. I felt it that I saw that.
You could see some of this practice.
અને આપણે રણદીપ એમાં કશું કહેતા હતા.
Yeah, મારે એક comment એ કરવી છે મને કે comment છે ને એક question છે. Comment એ છે કે this is the core of what this group is about, right? This Vallabhacharya, right?
Right,
So
right. Yeah. So we are going to talk about his key principles of Pushti Marg, call it
right.
that.
So what you're doing is right. That go a little slow on this one because this is the core part of this group.
Okay.
But okay, that's a comment. But the question you said in the beginning about this Vaishnavas, qualitative and quantitative difference, right?
Yeah.
And you gave an example of dollar versus nickel or dime or something.
Right, right.
Can you emphasize? Can you give a little example of quantitative and qualitative? What you mean by here?
Right.
Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, example will be like this. God is the total and I am a anshi. So I'm a fraction of the totality.
Okay.
You know, that's it.
Okay.
Or if you want to think in terms of, like, let me give you an example. If God is a tree, if God is a tree, and tree has many components, root, branches, fruits, flowers, leaves, you can just name it. So God is a totality, and I am a fraction of that in some form, which is one fruit is different from the other fruit. One flower is different from other flower. But in overall, I am a tree.
Okay. Now I understand. Got it.
Yeah. So,
Rajan bhai.
Yeah.
Give an example of Gita chapter 15. Mama Ivansho Jiva Loke Jiva. That's one of the interpretation. Mama Ivansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatan. Manashastani Indriyani Prakritistani. This is, I'm adding some of these Gita things because probably it may be a little futuristic in context of this one, but there is one interpretation you have Gita chapter 15, which we recite almost every other Friday.
Translation jara kone?
હું એક અંશ છું.
ઇંગ્લિશમાં બોલ.
ગુજરાતી તો બધા આવડે જ છે ને?
ગુજરાતી આવડે જ છે, વાંધો નથી.
ના પણ બંધ થઈ
તમારો
ગયો.
બંધ થઈ ગયો અવાજ.
અવાજ બંધ થઈ ગયો.
એક અંશ ભગવાનના અંશ તરીકે જોઈએ તો મન અને 6 ઇન્દ્રિયો થઈને એક મનુષ્ય થાય છે. સો ભગવાન કહે છે કે જીવલોકમાં હું એક અંશ તરીકે ઉતર્યો છું. મમય અંશ જીવલોકે જીવભૂત સનાતન પણ પાછો સનાતન છું, ઇટર્નલ છું એ. So it's there is a transmigration probably idea. That's the next verse. Jivabhuta Sanatana Manashashtani Indriyani. Mana along with 5 Indriyas makes it 6. Shashtani Indriyani Prakruti Sthani Karshati. That is the nature of these things that coming out from there.
Okay. And by the way, Wednesday, I think Ashok bhai હતા, Pratap હતા અને Anil bhai પણ હતા. I heard Madhu bhai saying Gita is Keval Advait. And I mean, I just was totally taken aback by that, you know. Only Keval Advaiti guys will say that Gita is Keval Advait. Not a single Vedantic scholar who is neutral will accept that version.
Okay.
For all of them, this is a better translation that I could do it often. Now, this is a Gujarati translation of Gita, which says, Maroj ansha sansare jiva rupa sanatana kheche prakriti manthi te manane pancha indriyo.
Okay. All right. So you got the answer, right, Rajni bhai?
રજનીભાઈ કઈ ગયા
ફોનમાં ગયા ફોન
નથી સમજ
No, he
I
just
should
got a
stop
phone
here
call.
because
Let
I
me
will
get
not
on.
understand Sanskrit anymore.
All right. Let's go forward with theology of Vallabhacharya.
Okay.
One idea that we have talked about is Vivartavad and a Parinamvad. Is because this guy, this is what it says. He transforms himself into the world, a doctrine known as Avikra Parinamvad. Or so it is unchanged transformation. So, because there are two aspects of transformation, or maybe there are three ways to look at it. One is called Vivartavad. That means the material manifests with the form, like a clay manifesting as a pot of various different size and color. So that is called Vivartavad. Only thing that changed is the name and the form. The material didn't change. The material can change and remain same. Other concept is called Parinamavad. That means actually changed completely, like milk becoming yogurt. So it cannot revert back to milk again. And third one is called projection and pratibimbo. The idea is that sun manifests in the image in the water. You know, nothing happened to sun, but it manifested as multiple images in the water. So that is the third one. I'm trying to remember the name of that in Anil bhai, what is it?
Parinamvada in
Huh?
Sanskrit.
Huh?
Akruta, not Kruta. Akruta Parinamvada.
Okay.
Or Abhasvad.
Superimposition. Yeah, okay. All right. So now this concept is called Avikra Parinam. That means it changes, but original remains as it is. So, I mean, if I use a crude analogy, it will be something like this. Milk becomes yogurt, but also remains part of that milk. So, what he's saying is God changes into you and me, but God remains as he is. So he is kind of દૂધમાં પગ ને દહીં પણ પગ. આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહેવત છે ને કે દૂધમાં પગ ને દહીંમાં પગ. So exactly same way. God manifests as us without ever changing from himself. So it is called Avikra Parinamvad. That is the Vallabhacharya's concept. So it is neither of the previously mentioned. It's kind of middle of the road kind of thing, in between Vivartavad and Parinamvad. Call it that way. So that is the concept. So why is he saying that? Because he believes that God is not God, but also this world. Like Krishna is not Krishna only, but he's also this world in a different form. Vallabhacharya says that. Now, Shankaracharya will say the God, the Nirguna Brahman is also world as it is, but it's nothing more an illusion. It's a superimposition. So it never changes into this. Vallabhacharya says actually it does change into this. So that's the difference. So Kriya Shakti of Brahman is described as a Purva Kanda of Vedas. Okay, that's fine. We already talked about Vedas. His Gnana Shakti is described in the Uttarkanda, which is Upanishad. So he's basically saying is that what is described in earlier version of Vedas and later version in Upanishad is a combo, which is what he's talking about. And he basically talks about Gita and Bhagavad is the key thing, because Bhagavad appears to combine many of these ideas of Gita and Upanishad into a bhakti school. So he's putting more emphasis on Bhagavad compared to Upanishad. Or he says that Bhagavad is actually a sense of Upanishad, just like Gita is. But the part that he emphasizes more is the bhakti part rather than a gnana part. That's where I see it. He may appear as a Vaikunt in the Vaikunt Loka as Parabrahman. So now this is another kind of call it way out. So he says Brahman and there is a Parabrahman. If Brahman is the ultimate reality, Parabrahman is what Lord Krishna is. So if you think in terms of Brahman as a Akshar Brahman and Krishna as a Parabrahman, then Parabrahman creates a wave in the Akshar Brahman and creates the universe as we see. So that's the idea. So he will say, or complicated kar didu main?
No, એટલે
Okay, so
yeah.
originally Vaishnavite school says something like this. God is a person named Krishna or Vishnu who controls the Akshar Brahman, which becomes active and manifests itself as a world and you and me.
Okay.
So that is his idea. So now what he's saying is that the Brahman that Shankaracharya is using is great, is fine. But there is something beyond that is Parabrahman, and that Parabrahman is Krishna.
So if you look at like tree point of view or hierarchy point of view, here is a you and me, a human being, then what next? And what then comes the Brahman and Parabrahman? Is that how it?
Yeah, I mean, you and me and the world is lower level, number
Right.
one. Akshar Brahman will be number two.
Okay. I see.
You know, and avatar will come in that picture because he does come as an avatar in the form of a man or woman. So
Okay.
avatar will be in that. Then is Akshar Brahman, and beyond that is Krishna, according to Vaishnavite school, or according to Vallabhacharya and generally in Vaishnavite school as well.
Okay. All right.
So he may appear as a charana of the Lord when Akshar Brahman appears in the form of Antarman. Now this is another concept. That by Akshar Brahman, when it becomes active and manifests itself as you and me, it also manifests within us and around us. And within us is Antaryami. You know, our Bhagavan Antaryami આપણે કહીએ છીએ ને. So basically he says that I am the seat of your consciousness in you, and I am pervading everywhere else as well. So that is what Vallabhacharya will say. And also in the form of avatar. So what he is saying is this, that the Parabrahman, ultimate Godhead, manifests as Lord Krishna in the real world that we lived in. But that man Krishna within in the avatar form is a manifestation of Godhead, who is Krishna himself. So he comes as everything, every avatar that you can imagine, in the full glory of himself, while we are only partial glory of him. So when he manifests as a full avatar, he is equivalent to Godhead during the time he lives in the world. But we are just Anshi, so we don't have that power. That's what basically bottom line is. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So his theology is called Suddha Advaita. Now that is a word that was coined not by Vallabhacharya, by one of the disciples, the next group. You know, they were trying to distinguish it from Kevala Advaita, which is Shankaracharya's version, and Dvaita, which is Vaishnavite and Vishishta Advaita school. So they were trying to coin a word which will be his theology. Now it's called Suddha Advaita, because the way he sees is this, is that in reality there is one, but Suddha form is only Lord Krishna. So just think about Avikra Parinamvad is that you and I as a manifested as a Parinam of Lord Krishna, but in his full glory, it's only Lord Krishna. And we are not. That's the idea. So he basically coined the word Suddha, and essentially he says, the school of purified non-dualism sees equality in the essence of individual self with God. So he accepts that we are qualitatively similar, except that quantitatively we are not. The omnipotency of Lord we don't possess. He only can possess. All right. So there is no real difference between two, like spark and fire. So he's using the analogy that you talked about. If God was a fire, you and I are a spark. So we come and go. We come momentarily, but the fire continues to burn through eternity. So we will keep on flying from fire for a brief period and die. So fire is same as, the spark is same as fire in a qualitative aspect, but momentary aspect we are not, and quantitatively aspect we are not, because it's only a spark compared to the big fire. So individual soul is clouded by avidya. Is not clouded by avidya, but Brahman with one attribute of Anand. Now that is another distinction which Charita talks about. Keval Advait typically says that we suffer because we lack knowledge that I am Brahman, the avidya part. And what Vallabhacharya says, we suffer in the life because if Satchit Ananda was there, we lack the complete manifestation of Ananda that Lord is. So we do not have that full rasa. We do not enjoy. The fourth aspect in Vallabhacharya's concept is called Satchit Ananda and rasa. So we do not have the full Ananda form of Lord Krishna. So we do not enjoy the rasa of communion with God. And the only way we can do it is by bhakti. The enjoying the candy, tasting the candy, and experiencing the bliss of what candy must be, the entire candy must be. So we get the only way we can experience the God is through bhakti, to experience the rasa and experience the ananda aspect of God. Vallabhacharya, important part of Vallabhacharya is ananda. Important part of Keval Advait Shankaracharya is avidya, lack of knowledge. So such chit is the consciousness. So the consciousness is deficient, or consciousness is clouded by avidya. So we do not have the full manifestation of that ultimate consciousness. That is the kind of distinction between those two.
So Rajan bhai, Ananda in Vallabhacharya's case, a classic example would be like Mira
Exactly right. Right. What Bhakta experience is the ultimate reality of Anand when there is a communion with Godhead. And that for him is the moksha. What Vallabhacharya will say, the primary way to achieve Godhead is to experience that bliss. Moksha is a byproduct. That is not the goal.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The bliss itself is the goal. The Ananda aspect is the goal. And that will eventually result in moksha, but that is not what you are aiming for. Anil bhai, any comments?
My understanding is to make a connection like with the Supreme, and that connection should give me the joy. That is the kind of my moksha.
Exactly right. Yeah. The soul is both a doer and enjoyer. It's atomic in size but pervades the whole body. મારામાં થોડું જતું રહે છે, નીચેનું નીચે શું આવે છે, આપણે સેજ નાનું કરો ને.
એવું કરું છું.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, maybe my slide was like that. It's just messed up.
No, it was a little bit bigger in here.
So
okay.
One more question. So Vallabhacharya said that bhakti, if you attain that level of bliss, the byproduct is a moksha.
That's right.
Right? Shankaracharya doesn't say that way, right? Correct.
No, Shankaracharya will say is that once you remove the layer of ignorance around you, you will experience, you will merge into Brahman. And that is a moksha. That is a liberation.
Thank you.
So it is atomic in size, but pervades the whole body through the essence like sandalwood. Now that's another analogy. The analogy is like this. Okay, if you have a sandalwood at one place and put it in the room, the fragrance will be felt everywhere. Agarbatti તમે મૂકી હોય, if you burn it, the fragrance will be spreading everywhere. So God is like that, who is antaryami. He lives within you, and the entire body is pervaded by his fragrance. That's the idea. All right, let's move on. Okay, so again, this is continuation of Sakar, Suddha Advaita. Vallabhacharya will say this Sakar Brahmavad. That means that God is with the form. Shankaracharya will say it is Nirakar Brahmavad. So ultimate reality is without the form. That is the basic difference. And then what he says, Ekam Advitiyam Parabrahma of entire. This is basically same thing. There is only one Parabrahman, and for him Parabrahman is something beyond Brahman, and that beyond Brahman is Lord Krishna. His Avikra Parinamavad differs from Shankaracharya Vivartavad. Shankaracharya's version is called Vivartavad because the form is the only distinguishing feature. Like a clay is the ultimate reality, and the pot and the various size is the manifestation of that. And this is called Avikra Parinamavad. We talked about that. So Jiva and Jagat are Satya. That means they are real. They are not illusion like Shankaracharya says. Okay. Jagat, which is real as himself, he is whole, of which all jivas are part. We already talked about Gabai. He is a totality, I'm a fraction. Eko aham
Bahusayam.
Bahusayam, yeah, okay. Brahman manifests in many names and forms to rejoice, not being subject to avidya or maya. So now he is making a distinction between Shankaracharya and himself. Is that avidya is not the distinguishing feature. And maya he defines in a different way, and I think it's coming next slide. So his maya's explanation is slightly different than, it's definitely different than, Vaishnava school will view maya as a different way than Keval Advait Shankaracharya will say. Okay, let's move on. Doctrine and authority. Gnana is a means to bhakti. So now just you can see the reversal. Shankaracharya will say bhakti and karma are the entry point. Kind of look at, you reach the peak of the mountain, that is the gnana. And the base camp is karma and bhakti, according to Shankaracharya. Now he is actually reversing the process. He says, gnana is a means to bhakti and a limb thereof, rather than bhakti being a means of the finally acquired moksha by gnana. So he's reversing the process. Well, Keval Advait says karma and bhakti are preparatory, and a gnana will lead you to moksha. So that is the next step. And now he is saying here, gnana is the initial point of entry. And what is that gnana? That gnana for Vallabhacharya is knowing is that I am a fraction. I am not body, mind, intelligent complex, which is agreed by both. But that I am the jiva, the consciousness, Atman, which is a fraction of Brahman. And that is the knowledge that will lead you to realize that you need to reunite with God by bhakti, and that will lead you to final moksha. Bhakti is not just a means, but end in itself, uniting jiva to Lord Krishna. So again, he's emphasizing the same point that we talked about. That experience of ananda or bliss is the goal. Moksha is the second byproduct of that goal.
1 મિનિટમાં આપણું બંધ થશે પછી we'll restart it.
Okay, well, we'll continue. Let's try and finish. If we can finish this today, that'll be nice. Unless you guys want to leave.
I'm fine.
Okay. So we already talked about Gabai. Keval Advait will talk about three authority: Veda, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutra. And Vallabhacharya, especially Vallabhacharya, but most of the Vaishnavite school, Vallabhacharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will definitely add Pramana Chatushtay, which is a Srimad Bhagavat as an authority. So that is another distinguishing feature. They will view a Bhagavat as equivalent to Gita or
I see.
Upanishad in general.
Right.
All right, let's go on.
But
Principle, I think many of these are repetition of what we already have talked, but I'll just go through it. Okay. Principles